Okay, welcome to a brief introduction to Procreate. I'm going to just go through how to create a new canvas in it. It's this top right plus sign, and I'm just selecting the screen size for my canvas. And in order to get acquainted with some of the tools and different aspects of Procreate, I'll just go through the key ones that I use most of the time, and that's this feature here, this paintbrush. Inside of this option there are lots of different subheadings with different types of brushes that are used for different stages of working on a piece. So to start with, I'll just look at the HB pencil and I'll select that one and then tap off, and at the top right you have the color. So it's a full color wheel along with a wheel inside of it, or a circle inside of it, that has light, saturated and desaturated, along with adding black into the pigment. So I'll just select black for the moment, and if you look over at the left side where I'm scrolling through now, this is how we adjust the brush size. So up the very top, that'll create the thickest line for that brush, and then when you scroll it all the way down, it'll make the thinnest line for that brush. So each brush has a different inbuilt maximum and minimum size for the brush. Also, the brushes have opacity just below where you scale up the brush size. It has the opacity, so if that's at the very top, it'll make the darkest possible line, and then down at the very bottom it'll make the lightest possible line. So if you do it halfway in between, you'll get a 50% opacity. So those two sliders work on every type of brush that you can use. So if you go to a painting brush and use a round brush for filling in large areas, you can use it to fill in a hard black, or drop the opacity down and fill in a grey. And just below where the opacity slider is, there's an undo button that you can use to go back through every mark that you've made in this current session. And if I hit redo and put some of the marks back down, another feature within Procreate is that you have the option to use a smudging tool. The smudging tool has a similar presets with its brushes. You can use a more painterly brush, use one that has a bit of a texture to it, and again with the brush size you're able to pick up the pigment that's on the canvas and push it around. So the more you put down, the more colour you put down, the more you're able to smudge around the canvas. So you can get some that add a traditional texture. And then just to the right of the smudging tool, up the top right there, is the eraser, again with your brush sizes and opacity. So you're able to erase part of the image, and if you go all the way to 100% opacity, you can erase it in its entirety. And then we have the layers. So Procreate is a similar software to Photoshop in that structure of layers, as well as the types of layers that you can make. You can make multiply layers that, when you put colour on top, will just cover what's underneath and it won't sit on top of it like a normal layer with. So if I put this layer back to normal, it'll just sit on top of that layer completely. So there's lots of different, every layer option that you have in Photoshop is available in Procreate, as well as adjusting the opacity of that layer. So they're the main functions that are available in Procreate. Using some of these other tools, we can change the colours So here you can use a color balance to change the colors that you've already put down, but you have to be doing that on the layer that you're working on. And just to the right of that is your selection tool that you can use in order to copy a selection. If you want to copy it, you use those two parallel lines at the bottom, and then it'll copy what's on that layer, what was in your selection, and duplicate it and make it a new layer. And then using the cursor up the top that's currently selected, you can transform your selection, and then it'll show these dotted lines around the outside that you can use to transform that selection and make it different widths and heights and move it around all over the place, and you can invert it both in its X and Y axes. So in order to secure that change that you've made, you just tap off. You can tap onto the brush and that will lock in that change that you've made. So we've gone over using the brushes, some of the smudging tools, erasers, and your layers. So the only other different aspects that are left are the adjustments, and they're very similar to the ones that are available in Photoshop as well. You can blur your layer by sliding your finger across the screen for the amount that you want it to blur. So the further I take this blue line, the stronger the blur becomes. And then there are several other ones that you can use for the motion blur, so it goes in a linear direction, and curves, which will change the overall levels of your painting or whatever you've put down. And the only other thing from here is looking at, you have a video that's been recorded of your drawing, so you can hit time-lapse replay and it'll play through everything that you've done so far. And then if you go to canvas, you can flip your canvas horizontally to check proportions of your drawings, and then you have share, and this is how you're able to save your file or send it to somebody else. And you can just hit save image and that'll save it to your camera roll, and then you can do with it what you need to. So they're the basic features available in Procreate. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you.